First tonight, President Trump has urged everyone involved in efforts to end the war in Gaza to move fast, warning that massive bloodshed will follow if they fail. His comments on social media came ahead of indirect talks between Israel and Hamas in Egypt, which are taking place today. They'll be focusing on working out the logistical arrangements for returning all the remaining Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas agreed to President Trump's proposal to release all the hostages at the same time, rather than in stages like before. And the Israelis and the Americans have made it clear they want this to happen quickly, in a matter of days rather than weeks. But correspondents say it may take longer than that in some cases to find the bodies of the deceased, given the conditions on the ground. Meanwhile, fighting is reported to be continuing in Gaza, but the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has urged Israel to stop its bombing.
Well, it's a great deal for Israel, and it's a great deal for everybody. And you want to get your hostages back, right? Do you want them back, or do you not want them back? And it's a great deal for Israel. It's a great deal for the entire Arab world, Muslim world, and world. So we're very happy about it.
When do you think the hostages will start being freed?
I think very soon. They're in negotiation right now as we speak. They've started the negotiation. It'll last a couple of days. We'll see how it turns out, but I'm hearing it's going very well.
I can't tell you if Hamas will agree to it. I think that it's possible. I hope it'll happen, but I can't guarantee that it'll happen. And so if it doesn't happen, what President Trump has said is that he will back Israel completely in acting forcefully against Hamas. Well, let's hope that that we can finish it the easy way and not the hard way. Europe has essentially become irrelevant and displayed enormous weakness. If you want to fight terror, stand up and fight terror. Stand up and be forceful against terrorism. Don't capitulate to its demands. Don't feed the crocodile, in Churchill's words, because it's going to come after you after it devours Israel or any other country.
The plan can generally be divided into three topics. The first topic related to stopping the war immediately, ending suffering, providing aid with the withdrawal of the Israeli occupation forces and the exchange prisoners. On this front, we welcome the efforts that have been made at the Arab, Islamic, and international levels, as well as the efforts of President Trump, and we said we are ready to enter into direct negotiations to implement the exchange process and prepare the field conditions for this. For the Palestinians, the issue of foreign forces entering and administering the Gaza Strip is unacceptable.
We'll return to that story in a moment, but first, Israel says it's deported 171 more activists, including Greta Thunberg, who were detained last week whilst taking part in a flotilla trying to take aid to Gaza. Israel's foreign ministry said they'd been sent to Greece and Slovakia. Some of the activists have said they were subjected to inhumane conditions during their detention. The Israeli authorities have denied this.
There was some dehumanizing and violence and shouting, but we got the European treatment. It doesn't compare to the torture that Palestinian people are facing. So I cannot complain. I just, but still I cannot explain how relieved I am to be here.
Now let's return to our top story and the news that indirect talks between Israeli and Hamas negotiators are back on, this time in Egypt. They're looking to determine a date for the start of a truce and to create conditions for the first phase of President Trump's peace plan, in which the remaining Israeli hostages would be swapped for hundreds of Palestinian detainees. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Very good to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. Let's start with those talks taking place in Egypt today. What's your assessment of where things stand at the moment? Presumably, they're addressing the opening gambits of this deal.
Quite right. There are good positive aspects to it. Hamas has agreed to return all the hostages, and that is, of course, the key point. And very important it is too, and the talks are to be welcomed. As for the rest, it's not so rosy. There are profound differences between what Hamas wants, namely it carries on in government, to what Israel and America want, namely Hamas to go away and for the territory to be administered internationally, and even difference between what Israel wants and America wants, namely to say Israel said the PA, the Palestinian Liberation Authority or Palestine Authority, is not to take any part in the governance of Gaza. And just to add to the whole problems, Israel also disagrees, it would appear, with the notion of a Palestine state, which is what President Donald Trump has indicated will be on the cards, and even the withdrawal of where the troops should go. So there's plenty of meat for a discussion. However, what will happen is that the discussions, therefore, are unlikely to finish quickly, and therefore, as a result, they will not be finished, I think, in the 2-3 days that President Donald Trump has indicated is necessary. One reason for this rush has been mooted is that President Donald Trump is hoping for the Nobel Peace Prize, which will be announced soon.
And I mean, what's your understanding of how Hamas has reached this point? And I refer specifically to sort of those Hamas leaders in Gaza and those in Qatar.
Yeah, there is indeed some discussion here as to how they arrived, because their acceptance actually took everybody by surprise, almost in the same way as their attack on October the 7th took everybody by surprise. It's not clear. One obvious reason is that the incessant Israeli military attacks have finally brought it home to Hamas that their chances of surviving are slim. Perhaps this is one reason. It's the most obvious one. Another one is that the Trump plan is by no means as anti-Palestinian, and in particular anti-Gazan, as many expected. This, for example, he has not stated that all the Gazans must leave and the whole place be turned into a gigantic Riviera resort. And it's these sort of points which I think have inclined Hamas to support the plan, because Israel itself, especially its far right, have been far more insistent that all Gazans leave, although the Prime Minister himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, has often not supported this publicly. And so from my point of view, the combination of the carrot and the stick are the reason why Hamas has agreed.
So given that, I mean, and where we are we now slightly on the side of more positive developments in terms of what we could have expected when President Trump first unveiled his plan, with Hamas giving this positive but conditional response?
Well, therein lies the problem. The fact they've agreed to release all the hostages in one go, very important. Moreover, Israel doesn't want to release publicly, but via the Red Cross to stop the, as President Benjamin Netanyahu stated, and I fully agree with him, humiliating for Israel release of hostages that Hamas had previously arranged as a gigantic PR point. However, there are many differences here to be ironed out, and it is unclear that they can all be ironed out. Moreover, it is not helpful, and here finally America has said something, albeit not President Donald Trump himself personally, that Israel's carrying on bombing Gaza. I mean, it's rather what Russia's doing to Ukraine, talking about ceasefires while bombing up to the last moment. And here Israel is well past the last moment, because in principle they're starting negotiations. So that is a sour point, and the other is a difficult point.
So basically, there are a number of areas that need to be clarified, a number of loopholes that could be used by Israel to delay or even stall its withdrawal from Gaza and obstruct a sort of political pathway towards a two-state solution. So, I mean, I guess the challenge going forward is not just how to secure the release of the hostages, and the first is really redeployment from Gaza, but how to maintain that momentum going forward to ensure that a full withdrawal from Gaza by Israel takes place.
Yes, in fact, there are three of these problems. First of all, as you said, the full withdrawal of Israel. Well, once the hostages have been released, will they do this? And in exactly the same vein, will they allow even a transitional authority? And number three, will they allow a Palestinian state ever? Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated he doesn't agree with the third at all, has not agreed to a Palestinian state. He has also called into question exactly when the Israeli forces will withdraw from any part of Gaza, entire timetable plan. And he's also objected to the composition of the Gazan transitional ruling authority, which President Donald Trump wants. So we have difficulties here. Moreover, there's a trust issue. The trust issue is, please note, that the chief negotiator, amongst others, the chief negotiator from the Hamas side is someone who Israel attempted to assassinate not so long ago in Qatar. So we have a very difficult problem. Also, the continual bombing of Israel. And all this distrust issue means that although the initial release of hostages, I think, would be possible, though I doubt in the time frame that President Donald Trump wants, these further problems are likely to mean that it will be difficult negotiating. Please remember, when the hostages go, that is Hamas's last negotiating card. After that, they're utterly dependent upon Israel and America's goodwill. And that is a difficult commodity to buy into.
I think that's a very good point. I would wager that they are placing their stock with the Americans rather than with the Israelis when it comes to trust about what happens next. But I mean, are you surprised, Dr. Laskiewicz, that after all this fighting and Israel unleashing this blitz on Gaza, Hamas still remains largely coherent as an organization and is still able to make decisions based on consultations and deliberations and consensus making within the movement?
Yeah, and I think it's a tribute to their organization, but it's by no means unique in history. To give a more neutral but a good counterexample will be the Poles in World War II, who built up an entire underground state under German rule. And despite the constant arrests by the Gestapo and the SS and whatever, and the various liquidations, this remained intact through the whole of World War II. And so, therefore, it's not unusual in world history. But it is a feat nonetheless. And in that sense, Hamas, yes, is a very well-organized group. It should be noted that one reason why they are so well-organized, and for that matter, why Hezbollah has also survived, is because they represent at least a part of the Palestinian aspirations, in the sense that Hamas has made it quite clear they're not going to be beholden to the Americans or Israelis. And to that extent, they have the support of the population, much like in Poland, when it was occupied by the Germans, the AK and the Polish government in exile, in that case in London, as opposed to the Hamas one in Qatar, also were certainly by a large proportion of the people were supported. And I think this is the case here. So there's two aspects. Their organization is good, and they also have a good bedrock of support, if not by all the population, by a substantial part of it at least.
And how does Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government look just now against the backdrop of these developments?
Yeah, that is a very good point, because there is, of course, a further problem. One of these problems is that the far right of Israel has got grave reservations about this deal. President Donald Trump really went much further than they thought was possible, in much the same way as President Putin was surprised to find President Donald Trump suddenly moving in exactly the opposite direction by 180 degrees. And they were very surprised because it, after all, was President Donald Trump who talked about turning the whole of Gaza into a Riviera. Please note, it was not actually an Israeli idea at all. And so from this point of view, they are unhappy. I would imagine they're very surprised. They are hoping that, in fact, Hamas will fail to negotiate properly. And they are hoping, I think, rather like the Russians are hoping that President Donald Trump will change his mind, they are hoping that President Donald Trump will change his mind with respect to Hamas and the whole of Gaza. As things stand, there is one very important point to remember. It's all very well saying, as you read in the media, that Israel has agreed to this, Israel has agreed to that. That is not actually true. The Prime Minister has agreed. That is the chief, the leader. That is not the same thing as it being ratified in the Knesset. And as a result, the deal from Israel's side has yet to be fully approved. And that can go wrong. America's a very good case in point, where some treaties with Russia were fully worked out by a full negotiating team with the full support of the president, only to fail in the Senate because the Americans as a people, as a nation, didn't agree with it. And here there is a further danger, yes.
Sterling stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the author and international affairs analyst, talking to me on the line from London.